Sophia, a young and ambitious chef, has poured her heart into a small, struggling restaurant, determined to make it a success despite countless obstacles. One rainy evening, a stranger walks into her restaurant, asking for a simple meal. What seems like a random act of kindness soon turns into something far more unexpected. The next day, the man returns, but this time he's a completely different person. One with the power to change everything. As Sophia's world is turned upside down, she is forced to confront a shocking truth that will challenge everything she thought she knew about her past and the future she's worked so hard to build. Welcome to Limelight Tales. Sometimes, the people who walk into your life unannounced hold the answers to questions you never thought to ask. Sophia had always dreamed of becoming a chef. Since she was a child, she had found solace in the kitchen. The rhythmic chopping of vegetables, the simmering of broths, and the precise timing of each dish. Over the years, that passion had blossomed into a small, cozy restaurant tucked in the corner of a busy street. It wasn't much, but it was hers. She poured every ounce of her soul into it, experimenting with new flavors, presenting dishes with care, and building a reputation among the locals. However, running a restaurant was far more difficult than she had ever imagined. With rent piling up and her savings dwindling, each day felt like a constant struggle to keep the doors open. Still, she persevered, hoping that one day things would turn around. One rainy evening, just as she was finishing her shift, a ragged-looking man walked into her restaurant. His clothes were damp, his face weathered by the elements, and his eyes hollow with hunger. He approached the counter and quietly asked if she had any food to spare. Sophia, despite her exhaustion, didn't hesitate. She could never turn away someone in need, especially not someone who seemed so vulnerable. She took him to a corner table and brought him a warm meal, freshly prepared from what she had left for the day. He barely spoke as he ate, but Sophia could see the appreciation in his eyes. After finishing, the man silently stood up, thanked her with a nod, and left without a word. Sophia was left to clean up and reflect on what had just happened. She figured it was just another moment of kindness, like so many others in her life, but she would soon realize it was anything but. The next day, the restaurant was unusually quiet. The rain had stopped, and the sun had come out, casting a gentle light on the streets. As Sophia prepared for the lunch rush, she heard the door chime, signaling the arrival of a customer. Looking up, she froze. The man from last night stood at the entrance, but this time he was a completely different person. He was well-dressed, in an immaculate suit, his hair neatly combed, and his posture confident. His presence commanded attention, and he no longer looked like the homeless stranger from the previous evening. He walked in with a sense of authority, and Sophia's heart skipped a beat when she realized he was heading straight for her. "Good afternoon," he greeted her with a calm, collected tone, his voice smooth like silk. "I'd like to speak with the owner." Sophia stood frozen for a moment, still processing the transformation in front of her. She nodded slowly, trying to gather her thoughts. "I'm the owner," she replied cautiously. "Ah, perfect," he said, a slight smile forming on his lips. "I'm the new owner of this building. I've just purchased it." Sophia's mind raced as she tried to understand what he was saying. "Wait, what?" she asked, stunned. The man nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, I bought the building, and with it, your restaurant. You're now working under me." Sophia couldn't believe her ears. Her heart sank as she felt the ground beneath her feet shift. The weight of the revelation hit her all at once. Her small, struggling restaurant had just been purchased by a complete stranger. But there was more. As he spoke about the changes he planned to make, Renovations, staff adjustments, menu overhauls. He dropped the final bombshell that would alter the course of her life forever. "I know this might be a lot to take in," he continued, his voice softer now, almost regretful. "But there's something else you need to know. I'm your father." The words hit Sophia like a punch to the gut. She stared at him in disbelief, her breath caught in her throat. The man who had walked into her restaurant the day before had just revealed the unthinkable. This was the father who had disappeared from her life when she was just a child. The man who had left without any explanation, who had torn apart her family and left a hole in her heart. "I know it's a lot to process," he continued, his tone laced with sorrow. "But I've spent years regretting what I did, and now that I've turned my life around, I wanted to come back. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to make things right." Sophia was speechless. Her mind raced with memories of her childhood, of her mother's heartbreak, of wondering what had happened to the man who was supposed to love her. She had never understood why he left. It was as if he had vanished, without a trace, leaving her to pick up the pieces of her life. Now, here he was, standing in front of her as the new owner of her restaurant, a man who had abandoned her all those years ago. As the days passed, Sophia found herself torn between her loyalty to the restaurant and the emotions stirred by her father's sudden return. On one hand, the restaurant was her life. She had built it from the ground up, and she wasn't about to let him take it away from her. But on the other hand, she couldn't deny the complex feelings she had toward him. She was angry, hurt, and confused, but a small part of her wanted to believe he had changed. Her father, whose name was David, had indeed turned his life around. He explained that he had fallen into a spiral of addiction and bad decisions, particularly gambling, which led to his departure from her life. He had left to protect her from his toxic influence, thinking it would be better for her to grow up without him. Over the years, he had gotten sober, built a successful business, and had been searching for her, hoping to find a way to make amends. When David saw Sophia's restaurant in the local paper, he knew it was time to face her. But he couldn't return as the man who had abandoned her. He decided to test her kindness by approaching her as a homeless man to see if she would offer him the compassion he had never shown her. He never expected her to recognize him, but when she did, he knew it was time to come clean. As the days went by, Sophia found herself caught between two worlds. On one side was her restaurant, her passion, the life she had fought so hard to build. On the other side was David, the man who had walked away from her years ago, only to re-enter her life as a stranger, now claiming to be her father. His sudden reappearance was a shock, and the tension between them seemed to grow every day. Yet, as much as she resented him, Sophia couldn't ignore the fact that he had changed. The man standing before her was not the same one who had left her and her mother behind. David had worked hard to rebuild his life. He was no longer the man who had succumbed to addiction and poor choices. He had turned his life around, seeking forgiveness from everyone he had wronged, including Sophia. But while he had changed, Sophia's memories of the past and the pain of abandonment remained fresh in her heart. Their relationship, if it could be called that, began with a mix of strained silence and brief, uncomfortable conversations. David tried his best to support her without overstepping. He offered advice when needed, helped with business decisions, and used his wealth to invest in improvements for the restaurant. Yet, he was careful to avoid taking full control, understanding that this was her domain, her life's work. Still, the tension was palpable. especially as Sophia felt the weight of his presence looming over her. She struggled to reconcile the man she had once known with the person he had become. There were moments when she wanted to lash out, to accuse him of abandoning her for years, to demand answers to the questions that had haunted her childhood. But slowly, the more time they spent together, the more she saw his remorse, his guilt for what he had done. It wasn't easy for her to forgive him, but as they worked together, Sophia saw glimpses of the man David had become. He was no longer the person she had once resented. His actions were sincere, though she was still reluctant to open her heart to him fully. One evening, after the restaurant had closed and the last customer had left, Sophia found herself alone with David in the kitchen. She had been working late, cleaning up, when he walked in holding a bottle of wine. He offered her a glass, and after a long silence, she accepted. They sat across from each other at the small table in the back, a quiet calm settling between them. "I know I can't undo what I did," David began, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "I've made so many mistakes, Sophia. I've hurt you in ways I can never take back. But I want you to know that I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Sophia looked at him, her heart heavy. "I don't know if I can trust you," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "You left me. You left us without a word. How do I know you won't do it again?" David's face softened, and he set the wineglass down. "I won't. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I will prove myself to you, one day at a time." It was a simple promise, but it meant more than words could convey. The bitterness that had once clouded her feelings started to loosen, and a small, fragile thread of hope began to take its place. She didn't know if she could forgive him entirely, or if she would ever fully heal from the scars of the past, but she knew that there was something worth rebuilding here. A relationship, perhaps, or at least a new understanding of each other. As the weeks went by, their relationship evolved. Though slowly, David continued to support her in ways that respected her autonomy, helping with the restaurant's operations, but never pushing for control. Sophia, in turn, began to see the changes in him. He was patient, kind, and willing to listen when she needed to vent her frustrations. She found herself opening up to him, sharing the pain and confusion that had festered for years. One afternoon, as they sat in the small office above the restaurant, sorting through finances, Sophia looked at David, a new understanding in her eyes. "I think I'm ready," she said quietly, almost unsure of herself, ready to move on from what happened. David's face lit up with relief, though he remained quiet, letting her words sink in. For the first time since their reunion, it seemed as though they were on the same page. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," David said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I just want to be part of your life again, in whatever way you'll allow." Sophia nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her decision. It wasn't easy, but she knew that holding on to the past would only prevent her from moving forward. She had spent so many years angry and lost. But now, with the restaurant thriving and her relationship with David slowly improving, she could see a future. One that, for the first time in years, seemed to hold some promise. As time passed, the restaurant began to flourish. David's investments helped transform the space, and Sophia's cooking, once the heart of a small, struggling business, became a local favorite. They were a team, in a sense, though Sophia continued to lead, and David stepped back, supporting her from behind the scenes. The changes were subtle, but they were real. Sophia found herself leaning on him more, accepting his help without feeling threatened by it. In the end, Sophia and David reached a new understanding. It wasn't perfect. There were still difficult moments, old wounds that would never fully heal, but they had learned to move forward together. The restaurant, which had once been a symbol of her struggle, became a symbol of their shared resilience. Through all the pain and loss, they had found their way back to each other. And though Sophia couldn't change the past, she had the power to shape the future. With David by her side, they moved forward, ready to face whatever came next. They had both made their peace with the past, and now they could build something new, something that, at long last, was theirs. Thank you for joining us at Limelight Tales. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support means everything. And remember, sometimes the most profound changes in life come from the smallest moments. So stay open to the unexpected. It might just lead you to something extraordinary.